Within every myth lies a seed of truth, and within every fantasy, a glimpse of possibility. Today, we have the Diva who brings life to all the greatest heroes, warriors, and goddesses of Indian mythology and history, Mrs. Anuja Chandramouli. Welcome, ma'am. And she's known for her best selling books on mythology, historical fiction, and fantasy. She's a modern day Indian classicist and author of several fast selling books and best selling books as well. And I'm indeed honored to have you with us here in this interview. You're also a TEDx speaker, a storyteller, and you also, I think, frequently lead workshops in mythology and creative writing all over the nation. And you were listed in Amazon India's top 5 sellers. And I think I am super excited to have you with here in this interview. So first of all, thank you so much for accepting the invitation, and something to start with, more about yourself. What are you currently working on, and how's life been, ma'am?
Hi, Shrutika. Thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to do this with you. Thanks so much for that very kind intro. As for your question, life's going on. It's challenging. It's a challenging time to be an author right now because I think
Yeah,
readers are an endangered species. So,
true.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
I think I'm trying different genres right now, and
Oh,
I'm just experimenting a little bit. I've written a few short stories which will be featured in a couple of anthologies this
oh,
year.
wow.
And I've also tried something that's completely outside the Indian mythology, historical fiction genres, which I've dabbled with so far. So I'm very excited about that. And there's also another book from South Indian lore in the works.
Oh,
So
wow.
keeping busy and yeah, just going on.
Nice, nice. So I think I am personally excited, to read your work that's gonna come forward. So looking forward again for your works and all the best for that as well. So start with the question. I think most of your novels, it has received widespread fame in the mythological genre, and it's like you have adapted most of Hindu mythological figures. And what kind of challenges did you face? Because you have to like explore the characters and adapting them in your novels, you might have faced quite a challenge. So, what kind of challenges did you face initially when you tried to adapt Hindu mythological figures in your novels?
Yes, it is challenging to do justice to these characters
Yeah,
because some of them are deified. They're worshipped to this day. It's not like
yeah,
Roman or Greek mythology, which serves as very charming entertainment.
yeah.
It has literary value and stuff like that. Here we're
True, true,
talking
true.
about a religion that is still going strong, and in fact, people are more
Yeah.
fanatical than ever before. So
Yes,
it is
yes, yes.
challenging to do justice to them.
Yeah.
So I make it a point to do a lot of research. And when you do research, you see shades of patriarchy. And you see little
Mm,
a few obstacles like that, which you do not want to pay lip service to, just because it's been, let's face it, Indian mythology has been safeguarded by only one group of people for the longest time.
oh,
Only the Brahms had access to it, and
yeah.
men alone had access to this material.
Mm,
So, for many, many generations, barring a few exceptions, we've been handed down a certain way of looking at things. And I like to, do away with all that and get to the essence of the stories, get to the heart of the character. Just because at the heart of it, it's always beautiful, it's always inspiring, without
yeah,
the political agenda which creeped in. So
yeah.
that maybe I'm not without agenda, because I'm also having a subversive revisionist take. But at some point when you're writing the story, no matter how much research you do, no matter how much you've thought about it, I think the character takes on life of its own. And at some point, the character is telling his or her story, and you're just strapped in for the ride. And it can surprise you. It can surprise the reader as well as the author.
Yeah. Yeah, true, ma'am. So I would like to start with your book Shakti, the Divine Feminine, because kind of relating it. And the title itself is like very powerful and inspiring, I guess. And the novel explores more about, the feminine aspect of divinity and supremacy. So did you get the idea through your love for the legendary idols, and or do you want to like utilize these mythological concepts and characters to represent feminism in a modern way? So is it for the love for the characters, or do you want to, preserve history and teach the future generations about it. What was your approach to portraying these characters, especially female idols, in your novels?
As you rightly pointed out, Shakti is very powerful, a very, very
Yeah,
potent force. But
yeah.
the idea for this novel had its roots in profound pain, I should say. Because at that time I was a content writer, and I was covering I was a content writer for a news website, and I was covering the Nirbhaya case at that time. And I used
Okay.
to stay up all hours of the night looking for updates. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
we all really were rooting for her because she was so brave.
Yeah.
And I really wanted her to survive. I have two daughters, and I was rooting for her because she was so brave, because she was, talking to the cops, giving evidence. And I could see that she had this will, this fierce spirit, and this will to survive. So when I got the news that she had passed, I was in tears. I was very, very, I think a lot of Indians were very, very emotionally attached to this case. And at that time, when you're trying to understand how these things can happen in a country where goddess worship is so prevalent, you
Yeah.
place there is definite love for the divine feminine here. Then how is it a daughter of the soil can be forced to endure such a harrowing ordeal? So you're trying to think about it, and I realized that originally the original myths, you have Durga and Kali, who are summoned to war when the masculine gods, the deities, have all failed. They've tried their best and they can't take out someone. You need the feminine touch. You need the divine mother to step forward. And her Vahana is the lion, the Simha. That's so she's special, she's extraordinary. So being a woman, we are powerful beings. And that's where I had this idea for Shakti, that we need to break free of the shackles. We need to stop being afraid. At the end of the day, India is home. It's our country. And I had so many students at the time. We were all talking about should we carry pepper spray when we step out. And I was saying, see, first of all, it's okay. It's a good idea to be smart. But I feel you should step out without fear. This is our land. We cannot allow anyone to make us feel unsafe. We have to reclaim our rights. And it has to come from a place of strength. It can't come from a place of fear, sorrow, tragedy. It can't come from there. We need to accept that bad things happen, but we are more than a match, because we are all the children of the goddess. So that's where I had the idea for this. And turned out to be a very, very moving experience, intense moving experience for me, to read about the goddesses and to realize that there are lesser known myths where being a goddess doesn't spare you from violence, from violation. It's woven into our myths. And these were the goddesses rise above the challenges they faced. So that's where it started. Like I said, since the germination point for this book was from tragedy, that's why I started with Ushas, the goddess of dawn, who was such a popular goddess in the Rig Veda hymns. And suddenly there's a myth saying that Indra chased her away from the heavens. And I was exploring this a little further, and then I read about Brahma's incestuous passion for this goddess of the dawn. So again, this is about male power players, moving the pieces around, and women getting caught in the crossfire. So that's where the book came from. So she, when she's driven away from the heavens, she emerges as Shakti, not someone you drive away. You approach her at your own risk. So that's how, turned out to be a lovely experience for me. And so many readers over the years have reached out also to say that they found it very empowering and they could relate.
Yeah.
And that's a reward. That's the reward you want as an author.
Yeah, it's very true, ma'am. That was really inspiring as well. So when we talk about like mythology in general, so there is this stereotype, like we believe something to be true and we stick with it. And when we don't find it in whatever we are reading, we find ways to critique it and make it look false. So what's your comment on this? Like, have you felt that most of us are like influenced by certain concepts in mythology? Like, let's say we talk about culture or profession or even like women in general, so you have taken a bold step in showcasing the characters with their flaws sometimes. So do you think that we are influenced by, like certain stories and there's something beyond it? and what kind of misconceptions have been stagnant through these years in mythology, especially?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because I feel that over the years, a lot of these goddesses, especially, they've been sanitized. You
Mm-hmm.
get a very dude friendly version of the goddesses, and it's shoved down our throats repeatedly that women should be seen, not heard, that women should be docile, they should play the sacrifice card. But if you read the original myths and you read the legends from before, you realize that it's not quite how it seems. It's not the entire picture. I can give many examples. You take Saraswati, the goddess of learning. She was such a fierce, indomitable spirit. Even her marriage with Brahma, it was strictly on her terms. Because she said, see, he needs me to create, because he was impotent without her. He could not, it's a very obsessive passion from his side, which she fled from originally. She wasn't interested. She said, when the gods approached her and said, see, we need him to create, and he can't do that without you. So, that's why she says, okay, on my terms, I will help him with the creation process, but don't expect me to be a typical spouse, to sit there for his endless yagas, to dress up and sit. That's not my style. I will come and go as I please. So you have a fierce, independent Saraswati who also chose to live with the Gandharvas, to disseminate her art, her learning freely. And Lakshmi again, she's not, always clad from head to toe with jewelry and the very picture of chastity or whatever. Because Lakshmi again was a goddess who's been linked with other gods before Vishnu. So that's the whole point. Fortune comes and goes, and you can't control it. Ganga, everyone insists on revering Ganga as the mother, but that's only one face of Ganga. She again is such a wild, fierce goddess, and legend has it that the Mount Himavan had two daughters, Ganga and Parvati. So Brahma and the gods approached Ganga first because she was the elder sister, and they asked her to perform penances to win Shiva's hand. And she said, "Why doesn't he perform penances for my hand?" And immediately they called her the crooked one, because they weren't used to anyone who spoke like that, who had a mind of their own. She said, no, I can think of better ways to spend my time. And even when when she's asked to bear the upavasus, the vasus, who are the victims of a curse, and they're cursed to be born on earth, they ask her to release them. Okay, and only Bhishma is the one who's going to live for a long time, and the rest will be released. So she has to throw them into the Ganga, which is a huge ask, to something to ask a mother, no? And she says, I will do it, but I should get something in return. I was not meant to play the sacrifice card. I choose satisfaction. So she asks for a love that is perfect unto itself, that would enable her to explore her sexuality freely without fear of repercussion. So they say that in she's Radha Krishna is a story everybody knows. Some versions suggest that Radha is an avatar of Ganga, so that she could participate in Ras Leela, because she'd been cursed for falling in love before, because the gods needed her to just be a mother, and she was more than that. She was always a lover. She was so much more, which many women can identify with, because everyone is trying to put us in some box or the other, and we know that we have many faces, many interests. So it's very interesting. I didn't make these up. If you study the legends, it's there. It's just that, certain legends alone have been cherry picked so that women can be forced to conform to male expectations of what they ought to, the ideal woman ought to be like, which is why you're just reclaiming the original legends in many ways,
Yeah. Since you talked about the furnished and replenished form of history and goddesses, so we can talk about like governance, gender, feminism, and homosexuality, especially. And it's still a taboo right now, and it was not a taboo back then. So you also explicitly talked about this in your interviews as well. So what is your take on these taboos right now? So, and especially when you listed down and when you talked about this in interviews, did you face any major criticism for voicing about that? And what do you feel about these taboos in general right now? Because it was not there back then.
So again, these taboos which have come up, it all comes from an inability to keep an open mind where Indian mythology is concerned. Because everyone, it comes from a place of strong feeling, intense passion. Like I said, Hinduism is still very much a way of life, so people can be fanatical about it. So I have handled pushback, but usually it comes from those who haven't bothered to do the research. They just choose what suits them. And regarding the LGBTQIA question, uh, I didn't make this up. I didn't write these original legends. It's there. If you study the Padma Purana, if you study the Kama Sutra, they have made references to same-sex couples, to the third gender. It's called um, uh, there's a Sanskrit term for it also, Tritiya Prakriti, the third gender. So it's there in the Padma Purana, like I mentioned, where they talk about all kinds of unconventional unions. And to give an example, I mentioned Ganga, right? Everyone knows the legend of Ganga, of how Bhagirath brought Ganga down to earth. But if you look at it further, Bhagirath himself, he wasn't the first one to try and bring Ganga down. A lot of his ancestors also tried to break the curse which was affecting their family. They all attempted and failed. So Bhagirath's father had passed away before impregnating either of his queens, and the gods decreed that a son would be born to them. And so they say the two queens lay together, and Bhagiratha was born. Bhaga means vulva. So I did not make this up. It's right there where they talk about unconventional unions, basically, where it was sanctioned by society, because Bhagirath is one of the most respected characters of all time. He's not considered an abomination the way people treat it today. So it's very ridiculous, because this isn't the only story. Mohini, Vishnu's one of Vishnu's avatars. She would count as a trans woman, because again Vishnu felt that sometimes in his role as the protector, the feminine touch was needed. His masculine avatars wouldn't be up to the task. So Mohini is a character, an avatar of his we see repeatedly across the US, because he turned to her on more than one occasion to get his job done, to fulfill his purpose, basically. So Mohini, again, when you read the legends about Mohini, you will read a lot of interesting stories. There are legends in the Padma Purana where they say that Krishna's Raslila was something which was so enticing and intoxicating that even Shiva and Arjuna wanted to experience Raslila. So they say both of them took the form of women to experience it. So Arjuna was called Arjuni, and for Shiva, he later, this feminine version of Shiva became the head of the Gopikas. So it's how it is, how people chose to acknowledge that there are those who exist outside the bounds of convention. And you have Ayyappa, the recent scandal with Sabrimala. Ayyappa is Harihara Putra, which means he's the son of Shiva and Vishnu in his Mohini avatar. So a child was born of this union as well. And there are many, many examples of this. In the Ramayana also, the brothers Vali and Sugriva, they were born to Surya's charioteer Aruni. Aruni, when he took a feminine avatar. So with Indra, he had Vali, and with Surya, he had Sugriva. So there are many, many references like this. It's like there are so many examples, which makes you wonder where the stigma crept in. Okay, because, and then the answer to that again is obvious, because since these legends were originally in Sanskrit, of course we had the oral tradition, but when it was being transcribed from Sanskrit, a lot of the English scholars stepped in, and a lot of them were Christian missionaries, which means they had a very, very puritanical view of these things. This Victorian crudity, it crept into texts right then. And the bias has been perpetuated ever since. It's very unfortunate, because the original myths were far more tolerant, were far more accepting. We have in the Kama Sutra as well as Padma Purana, they have many, many terms for gay, lesbian, transgendered characters, and they talk about professions which would suit them ideally. They make it clear that since they are minorities in various at any point in history. The Kama Sutra says these are minority communities, which means they would, it's not a criticism or anything, it's just a suggestion. They say you guys would get on better in fringe communities. Certain professions suit you better, and depending on your own personal inclination. So based on that, they also give you a list of potential career options for you, basically, to make sure that you lead a life that is true to you. And I thought that was very beautiful. And it's so sad that we are not, we've allowed this to fall through the cracks, and we've just embraced such a very hateful narrative that's like really tragic.
Yeah, true. So you are balancing different roles right now as being a mom, an author, a speaker, and of course a dancer. Saw your reels was really, really nice. Your Bharatanatyam of dance. And so how do you manage your time effectively between all these roles? And because now as a mom, family, different perspectives. So how is it becoming? And I think again, as a mom, I think your views and your approach to storytelling would have been changed over the years before and now. So, did it change your perspective or your way? And again, the different roles that you carry in your life, did that influence your storytelling and your stories as well?
Uh, I wouldn't say this is, I don't want to look at it as something that's very challenging and too filled with
Yeah.
pressure, though there are some days where you feel like that. You feel a little overwhelmed because you're trying to balance many things and you're trying to do justice to all that. And I think every woman will be able to relate when I say that basically you're expected to be the best at so many different things, and it can get hard on some days when you just want to
Yeah.
be a bum and just sit in bed and do nothing. But you have so many commitments.
Yeah.
I handle it by by just, it's just the awareness that I think every generation offers more and more scope for women. Just a generation ago, my mom's generation, my grandmother's generation, they were women who are stronger, hands down, far more talented than me, but they never got the opportunities that I did. So on the one hand, I'm very, very grateful that it's so many things which weren't possible just a few decades ago are possible now. And sometimes I used to worry, when it comes to my daughters, I used to think it's not an easy world to be a woman in. But then I'll think for them also, they will have more opportunities than I had.
Yeah.
So it's up to us to make the most of it. And it doesn't always come down to productivity as such. It just comes down to doing the things you care about, because then it's not too hard. You are enthusiastic, you feel like,
Yeah.
yes, let's go for this. And sometimes it's a tightrope walk, but as long as you're having fun, and you also need to commit to radical self-care. That's something I'm always
Yeah.
saying. You need to take care of yourself. I
True.
think women are, like I mentioned, women are taught to play the sacrifice card. Cook for the family, you eat last, or you don't eat at all because you're too exhausted. We really need to rewire our brains, because you are the center of your own world. You are the sun, the moon, the stars. So you need to take care of yourself physically as well as mentally. And for me, yoga, tai chi, I've always been doing yoga over almost 20 years now. I think I've been doing yoga. Tai Chi was something I picked up recently, again in the interests of radical self-care, because last year I had a couple of health issues. And it scares you when you realize, oh my God, the energy levels are dropping. Am I
Totally.
becoming old and gray? Is it time to? And you don't, I think most of us have difficulty dealing with growing older. So you're thinking,
Yeah.
oh my God, what's going to happen? But you need to just
Yeah.
get a grip and make that commitment to health and wellness. And it's okay, as you can, as long as you're not too hard on yourself. When you allow a few days to of self-indulgence, basically, I think you can get by. The hard work doesn't feel like hard work because you love it. You love what you do, whether it's dancing or writing. I feel really blessed and happy that I'm able to do it. So I try not to focus on the bitter aspects of it. There are a lot of bitter aspects. I try to focus on the
Yeah.
better and just keep going. That's it.
That's really nice, ma'am. And as you talk about mythological storytelling, so do you think in the present scenario right now, Western storytelling has influenced especially children a lot? So because as far as I know, most parents they don't tell stories like Mahabharata to children because they say it has a lot of violence, sexual concepts in it. On the other hand, I feel like people tell Disney stories to them. I feel like Disney and fairy tales also has love, marriage, and sexual content in it. But it is almost that Western storytelling has almost influenced the entire present day scenario a lot, and people don't usually tell historical concepts to children right now. So, what is your opinion on contemporary storytelling and historical storytelling together? What do you feel about it?
I agree with you about the Western stories being every bit as dark and violent as Indian mythology, because even there the stories have been sterilized and sanitized. Even
Yeah,
something like Sleeping Beauty. You're talking about
yeah,
kissing a girl who's sleeping, and the original myth actually goes further. The Sleeping Beauty story, there was a child born, so it's rape which you're talking about.
yeah,
But I think it's nice to expose children to stories from the East as well as the West. There's a very nice balance there. It's like providing your child with a well-rounded education when you tell them stories from different parts of the world. It can be
yeah,
your Aesop's fables, it can be Hans Christian Andersen, it can be Greek and Roman mythology, Egyptian
yeah,
mythology. So I recommend it's like a well-balanced diet. And there are lots of lovely stories from the East also. There, you have your Arabian Nights, you have Indian
yeah,
mythology. So it's a good idea to expose your children to all these stories because it's invaluable as an educational tool, and it's also entertaining as hell actually. So
yeah,
and even see, lots of parents do address this. They say what it's dark, there are violent themes, sexual imagery, and I am saying, see, you're kidding yourself if you think that even young children are completely unfamiliar with violence or sexuality. Because even very young children, we belong to the animal kingdom, and therefore it's in our blood, this need for violence and sex. It's a very powerful
yeah,
drive. So lots you see with 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds touching themselves, and parents at that age itself they shame them. They say no, they hit their hands, or they say chi or tu. So it's not a very healthy way to raise our children. It's better to
yeah,
when you want to discuss these things with children about how it's a part of society, but you need to look at it with a certain sensible outlook, and that can happen through the stories, because the stories are self-explanatory, where the stories in the stories violence never leads to good results. Tragedy happens as a result of violence. When a war is fought, it's not glorious. There are no winners, there are only losers on both sides, because the losses are immense. Something like Ramayana, Mahabharata, especially the Mahabharata, nobody wins at the end of that war. The Pandavas say the Kauravas are lucky. They are united with all their loved ones in another place. We have to live without
yeah,
our loved ones. See, this is there in the story. It's right there. And children are so much smarter than you think. They get right to they get to the heart of it. So they understand these things a lot better than pretending that these things don't exist. Like, providing too safe an atmosphere for them where you're not talking about violence, you're not talking about sex, and you're ignoring their natural curiosity when it comes to these things, which means they turn to the internet. And the internet is a
yeah,
lousy teacher. It doesn't provide the context which stories does. And
yeah,
adults can't keep pretending that pornography isn't accessible to children. So if you want them, you can't say no. When you say no to children all the time, it's not a very smart thing to do, because immediately it becomes very attractive in the eyes of the child.
yeah,
It's better to share these stories with them, and you're sharing it on your terms. You don't have to dwell on the gruesome aspects of it. You can just say, yeah, it was not pleasant, it was ugly, and you talk with the child, and immediately the child knows, oh look, I'm being given a glimpse of an adult world. So they engage with it on your terms, and they're the better for it. So this is such a misconception that we protect our children from it, when we are actually not protecting them. We are just uh, you know um creating a very faulty outlook from the onset.
Very true, ma'am. So, talking about your book, Yama's Listening. So, it is like a set of contemporary backdrop, and it also like blends the element of Indian mythology with crime fiction, right? So, how did you manage to, craft the storyline between the mortal, immortal elements, and also including different concepts like supernatural, fantasy, justice, and crime, afterlife? So, it's like different combined together. So, what was your process, and how did it feel doing it?
That was so much fun. I really wanted a break from your typical mythology. So this was really nice. I love fantasy. I love reading about crime. It's like my mother used to be horrified because even as a child, I was very much into true crime, and I was forever reading books titled "World's Most Notorious Killers" and things like that. So, yeah, so, and this is basically, so when I got this idea, Yama is a character who pops up here and there, in my earlier books, and he's very fascinating. So, I wanted to read up on the ruler of the damned. And the question I asked myself is, who are the kind of people who end up in hell? And of course, the thousand hells of Yama, Naraka, and Garuda Purana outlines a whole lot of gruesome punishments. And they talk about River Vaitrani, which is a river of pus. And, these evil, damned souls are wading across this, they're tortured. So, when you ask yourself this question, immediately, all this true crime reading, which I'd done, factored into it. So it kind of seeped in. And I love fantasy also. So I had this very, very human guy who's thrust with this responsibility he never asked for. And it leads him on a very, very dark journey. And the thing is, we all wish we had superpowers, but it's like
Mhm.
Spider-Man said, oh, with great powers comes great responsibility. And you don't think
Yeah.
it's the best thing ever. You just, and if you're like that, you just want a normal life, to sit at
Yeah.
home, be bored, and watch Netflix. So it was very interesting to read this book. And again, he's very idealistic. So he feels that there's
Mhm.
scope for rehabilitation also, that you shouldn't, give people a bad name and condemn them to an eternity of torment.
Yeah.
His view is the theme here is, even evildoers should be given the chance to make amends, to set it right,
Okay.
to restore the balance. So it was a very
Mhm.
interesting concept for me to work
Interesting.
on. I really loved it.
That was really nice one. So, the final question. So you've also like taken creative writing workshops, I guess, in like different places. So, what would be the one message that you would like to convey to students who want to pursue creative writing, or want to write books, the newborn authors, so like me, who are trying to write something and explore creative writing as a field. So, and what do you want to tell, like, or to the mythological writers who want to like explore the field of mythology? What do you want to tell to them?
At this point, I'm going to mention again that readers are an endangered species, writers aren't. There are more writers than ever before. And that's not a very conducive environment, because you need to have readers. Writers need readers. And in order to become a writer, you have to be a reader. It's like breathing. You inhale the words and you exhale it out onto the page. One does not happen without the other. Lots of people take pride in saying, I don't read, but I can still write. And I'm always confused as to how that happens, because
Yeah.
without the foundation, you cannot build, in my opinion. So to all my students, I keep stressing this to the point where I'm probably boring as hell. But I do say you need to, imbibe the words. You need to take the words in. Your education is not complete without Shakespeare, without, the greats from the past, from any part of the world. Just pick your favorite genre, read a lot. And I say you can even read newspaper articles about IPL. Don't just watch it, read the sports commentaries on it, because the
Yeah.
sports journalists are so good. Read about current affairs. which is how I wrote Yama's Lieutenant, because I love reading about crime. So it's based on real life incidents from India itself, and also a few cases from around the world. So read, you get ideas, and it'll make you a better writer. And you can also support others, because this is like one profession where we need to support each other. Yeah, actually, any profession you need support from others. So let's all support each other. And I wish all aspiring writers, creative writers who want to write in mythology or otherwise the very best of luck. This is a deeply rewarding job, but very punishing as well. So, all the best.
So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was great interviewing you, and of course, heard a lot about your stories. And I guess it was a very inspiring interview, especially for me. So thank you so much once again for joining me. All the best for your future books, and would love to have this once again with you in the future. And looking forward for more works of yours. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shrutika. The pleasure was mine. Really enjoyed myself. Good luck to you. I hope
Thank
to read your
you.
books in future. All the very best to you.
Definitely, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.